Hello, everyone. Welcome to Celsius 233, your go-to place for fiction book summaries. Today, we will unravel the story within The Power of Darkness by E. Nesbit. In The Power of Darkness, Edith Nesbit explores the intense psychological horrors associated with fear, friendship, and betrayal. Set against the dark backdrop of a wax museum, the story unfolds as two friends, Edward and Vincent, challenge each other to confront their fears, only to find that terror can have real and lasting consequences. Written in 1905, the narrative delves into the nature of human weakness and the power of manipulation, crafting a chilling tale of suspense. Plot summary. At the bustling Gare de Lyon, Rose, the captivating young woman who had charmed the artistic circles of Montparnasse, prepared to depart for the Riviera. A crowd gathered around her, showering her with gifts and well wishes. But among her admirers, one stood apart, Edward, a lean, pallid figure, whose intense gaze held a devotion she seemed to ignore. Beside him, Vincent watched Edward's despair with a concealed satisfaction, for Vincent, too, desired Rose and viewed Edward's fragile composure with a mixture of pity and disdain. As the train's whistle signaled Rose's departure, her gaze briefly met Edward, igniting a spark of hope in him and stoking a cruel jealousy in Vincent. Determined to shake off his melancholy, Edward announced his intention to return to his family estate in Kent. Seizing the moment, Vincent proposed a visit to the Musée Graven, a famed waxwork museum that attracted countless visitors with its eerily lifelike figures of historical figures and gruesome scenes. Despite his reluctance, Edward agreed, hoping it might provide a distraction from thoughts of Rose. As they wandered through the exhibits, the wax figures seemed to come alive in the museum's dim lighting, an unsettling sight for Edward, who harbored a deep-seated fear of the dark since childhood. In the gallery of the French Revolution, they gazed upon the lifeless eyes of Marie Antoinette, staring through the prison bars, while further along, Vincent directed Edward's gaze to the severed head of Madame de Lamballe displayed on a pike. Edward's discomfort grew, but Vincent, unperturbed, mocked his friend's nerves and dragged him onward to the catacombs exhibit. Here, beneath the shadowy arches, wax figures depicted early Christian martyrs awaiting execution by beasts. Edward felt a creeping dread in the dim, dusty air, his childhood fear simmering to the surface. To him, the figures seemed poised to spring to life in the museum's oppressive silence. Later that evening, over drinks, Vincent mocked Edward's fears once more, taunting him with tales of how he would be too terrified to spend a night in the museum. Edward, wounded by the accusation of cowardice, challenged Vincent in return. If Vincent truly believed himself so brave, Edward proposed that he spend the night alone among the wax figures. Vincent accepted, scoffing at the simplicity of the task. He boasted that he would spend a night among the statues without fear, and with a sly glint in his eye, challenged Edward to do the same. Anger flared in Edward as Vincent pressed him, goading him to face his deepest fear. Unable to back down, Edward agreed. They struck a wager. Should Edward manage to spend the night, Vincent would refrain from pursuing Rose, leaving the field open for his friend. A few days later, Vincent found himself alone in the wax museum as the doors were locked for the night. Intent on winning the wager and feeling certain Edward could never do the same, he prepared to wait out the night in the catacombs gallery. The museum, empty and silent, took on an eerie stillness. Shadows played tricks on the walls, and Vincent, alone now, found his usual confidence slipping. He cursed at himself for indulging Edward's childish dare and waited impatiently for morning, his mind filled with uneasy thoughts. When the wager ended without Edward's presence, Vincent decided to celebrate, confident that his friend's nerve had failed him. But as he waited, Rose's presence haunted his thoughts. The wager alone would not be enough. He needed to humiliate Edward, to expose his cowardice publicly, before Rose. With cruel satisfaction, Vincent devised a plan to make Edward believe the wax figures were coming alive. In the darkness, he would hide among the figures and orchestrate a night of terror that would drive Edward to the breaking point. The following week, as planned, Edward returned to the museum at night, his hands clammy with apprehension but determined to face his fear. After the lights were extinguished, he moved carefully through the catacombs exhibit, settling himself among the wax figures, bracing himself against the icy dread that clutched at his nerves. Images of the still, lifeless wax faces lingered in his mind, feeding his growing terror. Hidden nearby, Vincent waited in silence, listening to the echo of Edward's hesitant steps as he crept between the statues. Through the darkness, he began to imitate faint rustling sounds, drawing Edward deeper into the exhibit, stoking his fear. Shadows and flickers of imagined movement darted across Edward's vision, his heart pounding as he became more convinced that something sinister lurked among the wax figures. In the darkness, Edward's breathing grew rapid, his senses overwhelmed by the oppressive silence. As Vincent took up his position among the waxen martyrs, he allowed his imagination to add its own terrifying touches. Slowly, deliberately, he began to murmur in a low voice, imitating the hollow whispers of the dead. To Edward's terror-stricken mind, the shadows seemed to shift and swell. Figures appeared to move, hollow eyes seemed to fix on him. A wave of pure panic seized him, and he struggled to control his breathing, to remain rational. But reason seemed to slip further away with each whispered sound, each flicker of movement in the dark. Suddenly, a match flared, and in the dim light, Edward saw Vincent's face, twisted with malice, gleaming from behind the figure of a stooped monk. The sight shattered Edward's last shred of composure. He scrambled backward, the shadows closing in around him, his hands grasping desperately at the cold, unyielding wax figures. In that moment, Vincent's malicious laughter rang out, reverberating through the stone arches, piercing the silence with an echo that seemed to belong more to the dead than to the living. The night watchman, alerted by the commotion, found Edward pale and trembling, his eyes wide with terror. He was barely coherent, lost in a state of fear that went far beyond rational thought. Vincent's laughter died in his throat as the watchman escorted Edward from the museum, leaving Vincent to face the cold stares of the wax figures alone. In the days that followed, Edward's spirit remained broken, haunted by the terror he had faced and the depths of betrayal he felt from his friend. And Vincent, once so smug in his confidence, began to feel the effects of his own cruelty. The wax figures that had once seemed lifeless now haunted him, their glassy stares fixed in his mind, twisting into images of reproach. But Rose's affection fell to Edward, her admiration for his bravery in the face of such terror unwavering. Vincent, having sown the seeds of his own ruin, found himself alone, pursued by the hollow eyes of those who witnessed his betrayal. That's it for now, but don't stop here. Edith Nesbit has more stories waiting for you. Check them out in the description or on Celsius 233. Remember, while our summaries capture the essence, they can never replace the full experience of reading the book. If this summary intrigued you, consider diving into the complete story, buy the book, and immerse yourself in Edith Nesbit's original work. Bye-bye, take care, have fun.